The security guards at Nexus Technologies had no idea they were dragging their own billionaire CEO across the marble floor like garbage. Marcus Thompson, worth $12 billion, disguised as a homeless veteran, watched his employees reveal their true colors when they thought no one important was watching. The same executives who praised company values in board meetings stepped over him in disgust. The HR director, who created their Second Chances program, called the police to have him arrested for sitting outside his own building. His head of security grabbed him by his torn jacket, screaming, "Get this piece of trash out of here," while Jennifer Price, his VP of Human Resources, lied to officers claiming he'd been harassing employees. The janitor, who earned $15 an hour, shared her lunch with him. The mailroom clerk risked his job to defend him. But the software engineers making six figures filmed his humiliation for their social media. In exactly 1 hour, these same employees would stand frozen in the conference room as Marcus revealed his true identity, playing back the hidden camera footage that captured every act of cruelty, every moment of kindness, and every choice that would determine who still had a job by day's end. The security guards dragged the homeless man across the pristine marble floor of Nexus Technologies' 40-story headquarters, his torn jacket leaving a streak of dirt on the surface that had been polished to mirror perfection just hours before. Employees in $1,000 suits stepped aside with disgusted expressions, some pulling out phones to record the spectacle, others simply averting their eyes from the shameful scene. What none of them knew, not the security chief who'd ordered the removal, not the receptionist who'd called for help, not the executives who watched from the mezzanine level, was that the raggedy man being thrown out of his own building was Marcus Thompson, the billionaire founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies, whose portrait hung in the very lobby where he was now being humiliated. In exactly 1 hour, these same employees would stand in the conference room as Marcus revealed his true identity, and the hidden cameras that had recorded every moment of cruelty, every act of kindness, and every choice that revealed who they really were when they thought no one important was watching. If you've ever wondered what people would do if they thought there were no consequences, if power and status disappeared and only character remained, then this story will show you why the true measure of a company isn't its profit margins, but how it treats someone with nothing to offer. Hit subscribe and join the Acts of Depth family, because what Marcus Thompson discovered about his own empire will challenge everything you believe about success, values, and human nature. 3 days earlier, Marcus had stood in his penthouse office looking down at the city that sparkled like a circuit board in the morning sun. At 45, he'd built Nexus Technologies from a garage startup into a $12 billion empire that employed 15,000 people worldwide. His journey from the housing projects of Baltimore to the Forbes Billionaires list was the stuff of business school case studies. But lately, something had been gnawing at him. The previous week, he'd overheard two junior executives laughing about calling security on a homeless veteran who'd sought shelter in their parking garage. The week before that, he'd noticed the community outreach programs he'd personally funded had been quietly discontinued by the board to optimize quarterly earnings. Most disturbing of all, his own senior leadership team had started referring to the hourly workers as expendables in meetings they thought he wasn't monitoring. Marcus had built Nexus on 3 core principles: innovation, integrity, and humanity. Those words were etched into the lobby floor, printed on every business card, and supposedly lived in every decision. But somewhere between the initial public offering and the international expansion, between the first billion and the 12th, those values had become marketing slogans rather than actual guides for behavior. His company had become exactly what he'd sworn it would never be: a soulless machine that valued wealth over worth. The decision to go undercover had come to him while visiting his mother's grave. Diane Thompson had cleaned office buildings for 30 years, often taking young Marcus with her when she couldn't afford a babysitter. She'd taught him that you could judge a person's character by how they treated the janitor, the security guard, the people who society deemed invisible. "Baby," she used to say, "money just amplifies who you already are. If you're kind when you're poor, you'll be kind when you're rich. If you're cruel when you're poor, you'll be a monster with money." Marcus had spent 3 days preparing his disguise with the help of his personal security chief, James, the only person he trusted with his plan. They'd sourced authentic clothing from a shelter donation center, a grimy army jacket with a broken zipper, jeans torn at both knees, boots with soles separating from the uppers. Marcus hadn't shaved for a week, hadn't cut his hair for a month. He'd rubbed dirt under his fingernails and into the creases of his hands. The transformation was so complete that when he'd looked in the mirror that morning, he'd seen a stranger staring back. The plan was simple: approach his own company as a homeless man seeking help, basic human dignity, maybe a job opportunity, through their widely publicized Second Chances employment program. He would interact with employees at every level, from the parking attendants to the senior executives, and see who his company had really become when the boss wasn't watching. Hidden cameras in his worn clothing would record everything, creating an undeniable record of truth. His first stop had been the parking garage at 6 a.m., where he'd encountered Tommy, a young security guard working the night shift. Marcus had shuffled up to him, staying in character, and asked if there was any work available, any odd jobs he could do for a few dollars. "Man, I'm sorry," Tommy had said, looking genuinely sympathetic. "I can't let you in the building, but..." He'd reached into his own pocket, pulling out a $20 bill. "There's a diner 2 blocks down. Get yourself some breakfast. They're hiring dishwashers too, if you're really looking for work." Marcus had been touched by the young man's kindness, but as he'd walked away, he'd heard Tommy's supervisor, Richard Garrett, berating him over the radio. "Did you just give money to that bum? What the hell is wrong with you? You want every vagrant in the city camping in our garage?" The contrast had set the tone for what was to come. At 8 a.m., when the morning rush began, Marcus had positioned himself near the main entrance, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Army veteran, will work for food, God bless." He'd chosen those words carefully. Would his employees respect military service, even in someone who'd fallen on hard times? Would they see the human being behind the circumstances? The morning crowd split around Marcus like water around a stone, their reactions creating a taxonomy of human behavior that both fascinated and horrified him. Some employees walked past with surgical precision, their eyes locked on phones to avoid any possibility of contact. Others made elaborate semicircles to avoid getting too close, as if poverty might be contagious. A few dropped coins or bills near his feet without looking at him, their charity delivered like a transaction with a vending machine rather than a human being. But it was the comments he overheard that truly revealed the soul of his company. 2 women from accounting, whom he recognized as Sarah Chen and Monica Williams, stopped just within earshot. "It's disgusting that they let them get this close to the building," Monica said, her voice dripping with disdain. "We pay millions in taxes. Where are the police when you need them?" "I heard Richard already called them," Sarah replied. "Security can't technically remove him since he's on public property, but the cops can find some reason." Marcus's stomach turned. These were people he'd personally hired, people who'd stood in his office and talked about Nexus's commitment to community engagement. Monica had even led a charity drive last Christmas, though now he wondered if that had been more about the photo opportunity than genuine compassion. Then something unexpected happened. A young woman in a custodial uniform approached him. Marcus recognized her as Elena Rodriguez, one of the night cleaning crew who was apparently working a double shift. She knelt down beside him, ignoring the shocked stares from the suited executives, and handed him a brown paper bag. "I made extra lunch today," she said softly in accented English. "Sandwich, apple, and some cookies my daughter baked. There's a card in there too for the shelter on Madison Street. They help veterans find work. My brother went through their program." "Thank you," Marcus said, genuinely moved. Here was someone making maybe $15 an hour, sharing her own lunch with a stranger, while executives making 6 figures stepped over him like garbage. Elena smiled and stood to leave, but Richard Garrett emerged from the building, his face red with anger. "Rodriguez, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're on company time." "I'm on my break, Mr. Garrett," Elena said quietly. "Your break ended 2 minutes ago, and we have policies about engaging with vagrants on company property. You want to keep your job? You'll get inside right now and stop embarrassing this company." Elena glanced back at Marcus apologetically before hurrying inside. Richard turned his attention to Marcus. his security uniform stretching over his hefty frame as he puffed up with authority. "You need to move along, buddy. This is private property." "The sidewalk is public property," Marcus said, keeping his voice rough but informed. Richard's face darkened. "Don't get smart with me." "You military? Really? Or is that just your angle to get sympathy?" Marcus pulled out a worn military ID from his pocket, a real one actually, from his brief service in the Navy before college. Richard barely glanced at it. "I don't care if you're General Patton himself. You're disturbing our employees and creating a health hazard. You've got 5 minutes to clear out, or I'm having you arrested for trespassing." "I'm not trespassing. I'm on a public sidewalk." Richard smiled, an ugly expression that made Marcus understand exactly what kind of person his head of security had become with a little bit of power. "You know what? Don't move. Police are already on their way. We'll let them explain the city ordinances about aggressive panhandling." As Richard walked back inside, Marcus noticed someone watching from a second-floor window. David Kim, his chief technology officer, one of his oldest friends from the early startup days. Surely David would recognize him, would intervene. But David simply shook his head with what looked like disgust and disappeared from view. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, one older and clearly tired of these calls, one younger and seemingly eager to assert authority. They approached Marcus with the weary efficiency of people who'd done this dance many times before. "Sir, we've received complaints that you're harassing employees and blocking the entrance," the older officer said. "I'm sitting on a public sidewalk, officer. I haven't harassed anyone. I haven't even spoken unless spoken to." The younger officer stepped closer. "You got any ID?" Marcus handed over a state ID card he'd obtained for this purpose, showing a fake name but his real photo, though the dirt and beard made him nearly unrecognizable. "Michael Washington," the younger cop read. "You really a veteran?" "Yes, sir. Navy, 2001 to 2003. And now you're begging on the street?" The contempt in his voice was sharp. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted from the building. Jennifer Price, his VP of Human Resources, emerged with his security team. Marcus's heart sank. Jennifer, who'd given presentations about Nexus's commitment to diversity and inclusion, who'd created their Second Chances program for formerly homeless employees. "Officers, thank you for coming," Jennifer said briskly. "This man has been harassing our employees all morning. We have video footage of him accosting people for money." That was a lie. Marcus knew that it was a lie, and Jennifer knew it was a lie. But she delivered it with the smooth confidence of someone who knew her word would carry more weight than his. "That's not true," Marcus said firmly. "I've been sitting here quietly. I have my own video." "He's probably mentally ill," Jennifer interrupted, "or on drugs." "Look at him. This is a professional environment. We have the right to maintain standards." The younger officer's hand moved to his belt, not to his weapon but to his handcuffs, and Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. This was escalating beyond his test, beyond what he'd planned. But before the situation could spiral further, another voice cut through the tension. "Stop, everyone stop right now." Walking toward them with determined strides was Terrence Williams, a mailroom clerk whom Marcus barely knew beyond passing greetings. Terrence was holding up his phone, clearly recording, and his voice carried the kind of moral authority that made everyone pause. "I've been watching from the mailroom window for the past hour," Terrence announced. "This man hasn't harassed anyone. He's been sitting quietly. I have video of Miss Price and Mr. Garrett discussing how to get rid of him, saying it's bad for the company image. That's the only reason you called the police." Jennifer's face went pale. "Terrence, you don't understand the full situation. I understand that Elena got written up for giving him food on her break. I understand that security has been ordered to call police on any homeless person within a block of the building. I understand that the Second Chances program we advertise hasn't actually hired anyone in 6 months because you keep finding reasons to disqualify applicants." The older police officer looked between Jennifer and Terrence, his expression shifting. "Ma'am, if this man isn't actually breaking any laws?" "He's loitering," Jennifer said desperately. "Sitting on a public sidewalk isn't loitering," the officer replied, "unless he's actually harassing people or blocking entrance, there's nothing we can do. Richard Garrett pushed forward. I want that employee fired, he said, pointing at Terrence. He's interfering with security operations. Fire me for what? Terrence challenged. For telling the truth? For standing up for someone's basic rights? Go ahead. I'm sure the news would love to hear how Nexus Technologies fires employees for defending homeless veterans. A small crowd was gathering now, employees on their way to lunch, stopping to watch the confrontation. Marcus noticed several phones recording, the corporate facade cracking under the weight of public witness. That's when another surprising ally emerged. Samantha Brooks, a senior software engineer Marcus had mentored years ago, pushed through the crowd. She looked at Marcus, and for a moment, he thought she might have recognized him, but she turned to address Jennifer instead. This is shameful, Samantha said loudly. This company claims to value innovation, integrity, and humanity. Where's the humanity in this? I'm ashamed to work here. Then perhaps you should reconsider your employment, Jennifer snapped, her composure finally breaking. Perhaps I should, Samantha replied. In fact, I know 12 engineers in my department who've been headhunted by Quantum Systems. They offer better benefits, and apparently, they don't call the cops on homeless veterans. Maybe we'll all reconsider. The threat of losing an entire engineering team made Jennifer step back. In the tech world, talented engineers were worth their weight in gold, and Samantha was one of the best. Marcus felt a surge of pride. At least some of his employees remembered what Nexus was supposed to stand for. The police officers, clearly deciding this was an internal corporate drama they wanted no part of, began to leave. Sir, the older officer said to Marcus, you are free to remain on public property. If anyone physically touches you or threatens you, call us. As the officers left, Richard Garrett made his move. Fine. If the cops won't do their job, I will. He grabbed Marcus by the arm, attempting to pull him to his feet. Get up. Get out of here. Marcus let himself be pulled up, maintaining his cover even as Richard's grip tightened painfully on his arm. But as Richard began dragging him toward the building, perhaps planning to pull him through and out the back onto actual private property where he could be arrested, Marcus made a decision. This had gone far enough. Richard, he said, dropping the rough voice and speaking in his normal tone. You're fired. Richard froze. Several people in the crowd gasped. Jennifer Price stepped forward, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and horror. Mr. Thompson, she whispered. Marcus straightened to his full height, the posture of poverty falling away even though the dirty clothes remained. Hello, Jennifer. Interesting morning, isn't it? The crowd exploded in shocked murmurs. Phones that had been recording the injustice were now capturing something even more extraordinary. The moment when the billionaire CEO revealed he'd been among them all along, seeing everything, recording everything. David Kim burst through the building doors, having apparently been alerted to the developing situation. He stopped dead when he saw Marcus. Marcus? What is this? This is a test, David. One that you failed when you watched from your window and did nothing. One that Jennifer failed when she lied to the police. One that Richard failed when he chose cruelty over compassion. Marcus looked around at the assembled crowd, seeing fear in some faces, shame in others, and in a precious few, vindication. But it's also a test that some of you passed. Elena, who shared her lunch despite being threatened. Terrence, who stood up for a stranger despite the risk to his job. Samantha, who remembered what this company is supposed to value. He pulled out his phone, sending a quick message. Within seconds, James, his security chief, who'd been watching everything from a van nearby, emerged with a small team and a set of clean clothes for Marcus. Everyone in senior management, conference room A, 30 minutes, Marcus announced. Everyone else take the rest of the day off with pay to think about what kind of company you want to work for. Tomorrow things change. The transformation in the executive conference room was palpable. The same people who'd walked past Marcus with disgust now sat rigid in their leather chairs, watching him enter in his signature black suit, the contrast from his homeless disguise making the moment even more surreal. The 60-inch screen behind him displayed footage from the hidden cameras. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every moment of humanity denied or extended. Jennifer Price sat with her resignation letter already typed on her phone. Richard Garrett had been escorted from the building by James's team. David Kim stared at his hands, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. But Marcus had also invited the heroes of the morning. Elena, Terrence, and Samantha sat at the table as equals. Their presence a reminder that character didn't correlate with corporate rank. 15 years ago, Marcus began, his voice carrying the weight of profound disappointment, I started this company with $800 in a belief that we could build something different. Not just profitable, but principled. Not just successful, but significant. I wanted to prove that treating people with dignity wasn't bad business. It was the only sustainable business. He clicked a remote, and the screen showed security footage from that morning. This morning, I watched my own head of security threaten a minimum wage worker for sharing her lunch. I watched my vice president of human resources lie to police officers. I watched my oldest friend, he looked at David, turn away from his window rather than confront injustice. Marcus, I didn't recognize you, David said weakly. That's exactly my point, Marcus replied. You didn't recognize me, so you didn't act. Your values only applied when you thought the boss was watching. That's not integrity, David. That's performance. He clicked again, showing a graph. Our stock is up 300% over 5 years. Our profits have never been higher. By every traditional metric, we're succeeding. But if success means becoming the kind of company that calls the police on veterans, that threatens employees for showing compassion, that values image over humanity, then we've failed in every way that matters. Jennifer finally spoke up. Marcus, with all due respect, we were protecting the company's interests. Our clients expect a certain environment. Our clients expect us to be the company we claim to be in our marketing, Marcus interrupted. We spent $12 million last year on ads talking about our values, our commitment to community, our Second Chances program. Meanwhile, you haven't hired a single person through that program in 6 months. The applicants didn't meet our standards. The applicants were homeless, Jennifer. That was their only disqualification. I've reviewed every rejection. Qualified people rejected for having addresses at shelters or no addresses at all. Terrence raised his hand slightly, a gesture that seemed almost absurd in the corporate setting but which Marcus appreciated. Mr. Thompson, may I say something? Please do, Terrence. I work in the mailroom. I see everything that comes through this company. The charity donations that get photographed, then mysteriously reduced. The community programs that get announced, then quietly canceled. The employees who get laid off right before their benefits vest. This morning wasn't an isolated incident. It's who we've become. Samantha added, the engineering department calls it values theater. We put on a show for the public, but internally, it's all about the bottom line. We've had 3 suicides among our contractors in the past year. Did you know that? People we work to death then discard because they're not technically employees. Marcus hadn't known that. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. 3 suicides? They don't make it into our reports because contractors aren't counted in employee statistics, Samantha explained. We've become experts at hiding our humanity failures behind technicalities. Elena, who had been silent until now, spoke up in her accented English. Mr. Thompson, I clean your offices at night. I see the waste, the excess, the $1,000 trash cans while we're told there's no money for raises. I see executives throw away more food from one lunch than my family eats in a week. But today you sat on that sidewalk. You felt what it's like to be invisible, to be seen as less than human. The question is, what will you do now? Marcus looked at Elena with deep respect. What would you do, Elena? I would remember that every person in this building, from the CEO to the janitor, goes home to the same struggles. Sick parents, hungry children, bills that keep us awake at night. I would build a company that sees people first, profits second. That's naive, Jennifer said. We have shareholders, obligations. We have obligations to more than shareholders, Marcus said firmly. We have obligations to the community that hosts us, the employees who build our success, the society that enables our existence. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Effective immediately, several changes are happening. Jennifer, your resignation is accepted. Richard Garrett has been terminated with cause. David, he turned to his old friend, you have a choice. You can step down gracefully, or you can help me rebuild what we've lost. David looked up, tears in his eyes. Marcus, I got lost. The money, the power, it changed me. I saw you this morning and I felt sick about what you'd think of us, but I was too cowardly to act. I want to help fix this, if you'll let me. Marcus nodded slowly. Terrence, I'm promoting you to VP of Community Relations, a new position we're creating. Your job will be to ensure we live our stated values, not just market them. Terrence's mouth fell open. Sir, I don't have a degree. You have courage and integrity. Those can't be taught in business school. Elena, I want you to lead our employee advocacy program, also a new position. You'll report directly to me, ensuring that every employee, regardless of position, has a voice. 6 months later, the lobby of Nexus Technologies looked the same but felt entirely different. The words innovation, integrity, humanity still adorned the marble floor, but now they meant something. The security desk where Richard Garrett had once ruled with petty tyranny was now staffed by Tommy, the young guard who'd given $20 to a stranger, promoted to head of security with a mandate to protect people, not just property. Marcus stood in that lobby, watching the morning rush with satisfaction. The employees still hurried, still carried their coffees and checked their phones, but something fundamental had changed. The homeless veteran who sat outside, a real one, not Marcus in disguise, was surrounded by employees on their breaks, helping him fill out job applications for the Second Chances program that had hired 47 people in the past 6 months. Terrence Williams approached, tablet in hand, wearing a suit that fit him better than his old mailroom uniform ever had. Morning briefing? He asked. Walk with me, Marcus said, and they headed for the elevator. How's the shelter program? Ahead of schedule, we've converted the 3 unused floors into transitional housing for 50 individuals. Medical services, on-site, job training, addiction counseling, if needed. The board fought it initially, but our stock is up 12% since we announced it, Marcus finished. Turns out authentic corporate responsibility resonates with investors who think long-term. They entered Marcus's office, where Elena was already waiting with Samantha and David. The morning meetings had become less about spreadsheets and more about stories, real human impact, measured not just in dollars but in lives changed. The contractor suicide prevention program is showing results, Samantha reported. 0 incidents since implementation. Turns out when you treat contractors as humans with guaranteed health care and mental health support, they don't feel desperate enough to end their lives. David added, the client retention rate is the highest it's ever been. That environmental firm we thought we'd lost, they signed a 10-year contract specifically because of our transformation. Their CEO said, and I quote, we want to work with a company that remembers business is ultimately about people. Elena smiled, her confidence having grown remarkably in her new role. The employee satisfaction scores are up 60%. Turnover is down 40%. When people feel valued, they stay. When they stay, institutional knowledge remains. When knowledge remains, innovation thrives. And Jennifer Price? Marcus asked. Working at Quantum Systems, David said with a slight smile. Their employee satisfaction scores have dropped 20% since she started implementing her efficiency programs. Meanwhile, our engineering team that threatened to leave, they all stayed. Samantha convinced them to give us a chance to change. A knock at the door interrupted them. James, the security chief who'd helped with the disguise operation, entered with an unexpected visitor, Richard Garrett, looking humbled and somehow smaller than he had 6 months ago. He insisted on seeing you, James said apologetically. Marcus studied his former head of security. Richard had lost weight, his face gaunt, his previous bravado completely gone. Richard, what brings you here? I need to apologize, Richard said, his voice breaking, and to thank you. Thank me? Marcus was genuinely surprised. After you fired me, I couldn't find work. My reputation was destroyed. I ended up at a shelter, the same one on Madison Street that Elena recommended to you when she thought you were homeless. The irony wasn't lost on me. Richard paused, composing himself. Being on the other side, being the one looked through instead of the one looking down, it changed me. I finally understood what I'd become. And now, Marcus asked? Now I volunteer at that shelter. I use my security experience to keep the residents safe, not to keep them out. I'm not asking for my job back. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that your test didn't just reveal who we were. For some of us, it created the chance to become who we should be. After Richard left, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Elena spoke. That's the real measure of change, isn't it? Not just replacing bad people with good ones, but creating the conditions where bad people can become good. Marcus walked to his window, looking down at the city below. His mother had been right. Money just amplified who you already were. But she'd taught him something else too. People could change, given the chance and the choice. I want to tell you all something, Marcus said, turning back to his team. The morning I sat on that sidewalk, I wasn't just testing you. I was testing myself. Would I have the courage to reveal the truth, even if it meant losing everything? Would I choose righteousness over revenue? The hardest part wasn't the disguise or the treatment. It was the mirror it held up to what I'd allowed my company to become. But you changed it, Terrence said. You're changing it. We're changing it, Marcus corrected. Every employee who chooses kindness over convenience. Every manager who chooses people over profits. Every executive who remembers that our true bottom line isn't measured in dollars, but in human dignity. The morning sun filled the office, casting long shadows that seemed to point toward the future. Outside, the city hummed with life. Millions of people, each with their own struggles, their own dignity, their own worth that had nothing to do with their bank accounts. My mother used to clean buildings like this, Marcus said quietly. She'd take me with her sometimes, and I'd sit in lobbies watching important people rush past us like we were furniture. I promised myself that if I ever became one of those important people, I'd remember what it felt like to be invisible. I forgot that promise for a while. The test wasn't just about revealing who you were. It was about remembering who I was meant to be. A year later, the Harvard Business Review would publish a case study on the Nexus transformation, calling it the most dramatic corporate culture shift in modern history. But for Marcus, the real victory was simpler. It was Tommy using his security position to help rather than hassle. It was Elena's daughter interning in the engineering department, her path from poverty to possibility made real. It was the 47 formerly homeless employees who now had not just jobs but careers, not just paychecks, but purpose. The Acts of Depth family knows that true leadership isn't about wearing expensive suits or sitting in corner offices. It's about being willing to sit on cold sidewalks to understand the truth about your empire. If Marcus's story reminded you that every person deserves dignity, regardless of their circumstances, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and remember, the way we treat those who can do nothing for us reveals everything about who we really are. Sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do is disappear into the crowd and see what remains when the spotlight fades.